Hello and welcome to our songwriting sparring session on a Sunday. That was a lot of S's, but fortunately we're not in an engineering class today. We are in a songwriting class, and today our focus is going to be on melodies. So for those of you who like to sing, for those of you who like to play and come up with melodies, this is going to be a great session because we're going to dive a little bit into the technicalities of melody writing rather than just leaving it to chance, which in some respects you have to do because obviously you have to be inspired to write something new. But once you've written something that you think you like, that could be a goer, so to speak, then it's a good idea to be able to evaluate what you've written, and especially if you've had a lot of inspiration and you have to choose between maybe 10, 20, 30 different melodies for a given section. This is, by the way I like to write as well. I like to give myself lots of options. The reason behind that is that if the melody that I eventually choose has already beaten a lot of other contenders in my own melody playlist, so to speak, then I feel it has a greater chance of then eventually beating my competitors' melodies as well, because I write professional songs, I write songs for a living, so I always think about that aspect as well. And so I hope those of you who are watching today or later in the replay that you also have an interest in writing commercial songs, because if you don't have an interest in doing this professionally, or at least pushing yourself as far as you can push yourself, then maybe what I'm going to tell you today is a little bit over the top. See how it goes. Hopefully you'll find it interesting all the way through. So as I said, today it's going to be a little bit more technical, and I'm going to play you a little video in a minute from my Songwando training course, my songwriting training course, going through some of the basics of melody writing in terms of how melodies are constructed and how the building blocks of melody are formed. And for those of you who have not heard it, I'll be talking about stable and unstable notes. And at some point during the video, I'm going to ask you to jot down a certain sequence of notes. Now, because of the technicalities here, I'm not going to be able to stop it, or not going to stop it. So if you want to jot something down, jot it down quickly, right? And then you see whether you got it right or not. And last time when we talked about melodies on this channel, we talked about something called singy or punchy. Singy being a word that maybe I made up, I don't know, I've been using it in my classes for a long time. And so today it's going to be quite similar, but maybe we'll call it emotional melody writing and more matter-of-fact melody writing. If you remember from our lyrics episodes, sometimes it's good to lay it on thick and pull on the listener's heartstrings. Sometimes, though, it's better to just state what you need to state and be a little bit colder, cooler about it, right? Not go so deep into the emotional red zone, so to speak. And we're going to find out today where that is and how you can go into it, and also how you can avoid it if you want to. So what I want to do now is play you that video, and after that it's going to be about 10 minutes or so, maybe a little bit longer, but not much more. And after that I'm going to be back here with you, and I can answer any questions you may have about the video and about other things melody related. And then we're going to listen to a lot of song examples, because it's not going to be all theory today. We're going to listen to lots of different songs, and there's always, every song, to me anyway, is a learning opportunity, which I love. So whether that's a song by the masters, or whether it's songs that maybe have been written by students, or songs that have been written by me, it doesn't matter. We can always learn something from any song that we analyze. So let's see whether the video works. If it does, I shall see you in about 10-12 minutes, something like that.
I know nothing, very little, quite a bit, all there is to know, about music theory. You can see I've had the split personalities option installed. It was on sale for $29.99. So, what does a songwriter actually need to know?
How about intervals, scales, keys, tonal centers, and stable and unstable notes? We'll fire up the keyboard now, and we'll soon find out that music theory for songwriters isn't actually as complicated as you may have thought. See you in a second. Now, the first thing we'll look at is what is called the tonal center or the root note, and in our example, we'll do everything in the key of C major. So our tonal center would be C, and our C major scale would be this. This is called a major scale, and it is characterized by having two semitones in specific places. Semitones are differences between the keys on a keyboard. So if I play, this is when I play only semitones, one semitone after the other, which, by the way, is also called the chromatic scale. But for now, we're not worried about chromatic scales. We'll just look at the major scale because it's the easiest to understand, and it'll be a great platform for us to explore music theory. So let me play the scale again. And it is based on 7 different notes. These are also called the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the octave. And the major scale is characterized by having semitones in a predictable place. They're always in the same place, and that's when we call it a major scale. So in our example, it'll be the third and the fourth, which are always a semitone apart, and the seventh and the octave, which are always a semitone apart. Let me play you the scale one more time and watch out for the 3 and the 4 and the 7 and the 8. So when we have the semitones set up in this way, then we have a major scale, and our particular major scale is in the key of C major, starting on this note here, which is a C on the piano. So I hope you're in a good position now to follow along with the distinctions that we're going to make in this lesson and the ones to come. The first distinction that we're going to make is between stable and unstable notes. You may have heard of that before. If not, stable is a different word for friendly, harmonious, pleasant, whereas unstable would be unfriendly, disharmonious, or unpleasant. And you might think that we only want pleasant notes, but that is not the case. Music consists of a balance between stable and unstable notes. In the same way as you wouldn't want to watch a film where all the characters get on really, really well and nothing bad ever happens to those characters. The same thing with music. we want a nice mixture of pleasant things and a few unpleasant things to make the pleasant things seem more pleasant. So we want to establish a sequence of those notes in the scale from 1 to 8, and we're going to start with the most stable notes and end up with the most unstable notes. And if you like, you can pause the video and have a guess. Write down a sequence of those 8 numbers, starting from the 1 and then ending up on the most unstable interval. So take a minute and have a guess, and I will be back with you in a second. All right, we're back, and now I'm going to give you the solution if you took that challenge, and the most stable interval is the octave. Like so. If you listen to it very closely, there's a certain purity about that interval. This is because the frequencies are mathematically related in such a way that the octave is twice the frequency of the root note, which is a very clean mathematical relationship. And therefore, this interval, the octave, has a very pure, clean feel to it. The next interval I want to look at in that sequence from the most stable to the most unstable note is the fifth. I hope you can hear that there is a little bit of a beating between those two notes. Have another listen. It's not quite as clean as the octave. And now we come to the next interval in our sequence, which is the major third. As you can hear, there's more tension between those two notes than we previously heard between the octave, the 1 and the 8, and the 1 and the 5 or the 5th. This is the third, and we have quite a bit of tension, but it is pleasant. It sounds nice. The major third is also the most romantic or pretty note out of all those notes in the scale, and therefore we use it when we want to portray a particular emotion, whereas the octave and the fifth have a stronger, more muscular, cleaner quality, and we use those when we want to make a statement, a strong statement. We don't want to have too much emotion in our melody at that point. Now, these were the 3 stable intervals, and now we come to the unstable intervals. So if you've kept count, we have 4 intervals left. And now it's just a question of the degree of instability. And the first interval that we're going to look at is the 6th. So remember, we get there by just going up in the scale. So this is the 6th. And you can hear that there's a lot more tension than between those other intervals we looked at, but it doesn't sound horrible or really unpleasant. But what we do want to do with that note is to resolve it into the nearest stable note, which is the 5th. So 6 goes into 5. Just remember that 6 goes into 5. And this is also called appoggiatura. Which is an old Italian word and appoggiare means to lean into. So we're leaning into that unstable note and taking advantage of its emotional quality and then resolving into the fifth, which gives us a nice feeling of resolution. Now, the next unstable interval in our sequence is the fourth. You can hear more and more tension is creeping in, and we want to resolve into the third. And now we have two intervals left. Next up is the second. You can hear that's a clash. When I play them together, then you'll hear that it's not very pleasant at all. And this movement here, the second goes into the first, which is our tonal center. And it's a very strong pull. And then an even stronger pull is being exerted by the center from the last unstable interval, which is the seventh. The seventh goes into the eighth. The 7 into 8, like so. Very strong pull. You can also call it gravitational pull, like the moon is pulled towards the gravitational center of the earth. And that's our sequence of intervals, from the most stable to the most unstable. Let me play this again. 1, 8, 5, 3, 6, 4, 2, 7. One more time. You can hear the last interval when I play those notes at the same time. It's a horrendous clash, but it adds colour to our music, which is why when we employ it sparingly, it can be a very, very good way of creating tension and then giving the listener a sense of release. See, this wasn't too bad. I hope you're getting an idea of what we need to know and why we need to know it. Because writing by feel is good, but this brings us to the next songwriter secret.
I think I can see where you're going with this. But now we want some time to mess around on our instruments. Between the four of us, we play them all, and get a feel for this newly found control ourselves. Can you wrap up this lesson now?
Alright, let's wrap it up. The main building block of music is the interval, the relationship between two notes, and the relationship between a note and the tonal center of the key, which leads to the concept of scales. Get a feel for how these intervals and scales sound, and then you'll hopefully start to feel more in control and start making deliberate choices when it comes to writing the melodies for your songs. Where do we go from here? Just practice these concepts for a bit, and then we'll move on to the next dimension. Right, so we're back live. Hope you haven't fallen asleep like somebody did in the video. And so this is just a little bit of a taste of what to expect in my songwriting course. It's not going to be as theoretical like that all the way through, but we have to establish certain fundamentals, because when we learn those, then everything else is going to be easier. And that applies to anything we study in writing and production. If we are learning a new DAW like Ableton or Logic, we can just mess around with it for hours or days or weeks or sometimes years. Or we can get to know the app properly from the ground up, and then that makes everything else a lot easier, meaning you can spend a lot more time in the zone writing and producing rather than scratching your head at what to do next, how to solve that particular problem. And that's the same in melody writing as well. So we write from the heart, as I always say, but when we come to edit, then we know what to do. And so in this case, we know how emotional or matter of fact our melodies are supposed to be, because that depends, of course, on the genre. Like in when we talk about lyrics, it depends how much imagery we can use. For example, in dance songs, EDM songs, we don't have as much imagery and story progression as we have in a country song. And of course, every genre has its own rules, and therefore we need to do a lot of active listening as well. We listen really intently to what's going on in master songs or in the types of songs that we're going to listen to today, so that not a second of listening time is ever wasted. And let's go straight to the examples. So I've got a song lined up which I wrote some years ago with other people, of course, as well. Most of the songs I've written are with other people. I think I may have talked about collaboration before. If not, give me a minute to talk about this now. It's always a good idea to get somebody else's musicality on board, and of course their contacts as well if you're looking to do this professionally. But it's really, really difficult to do everything, including writing all the lyrics, the music, and program it all up and play all the instruments, unless you're Prince, maybe, and not many of us are as good as him. So it's always a good idea to bring in that talent, collaborate with people, and then writing becomes a lot easier, even if it's just for quality control, even if the other person isn't contributing that much. But by playing your ideas to somebody else in the room, or these days virtually, then you get more of an impression of how your music is going to fare out there in the real world. And so I'm just going to go through some examples today. The first song we're going to play is called Jade, and so we're just going to have a listen, and then we're going to try and get some nuggets of wisdom out of it. Right.
Take a shot at your heart, but a misfire occurred and your life is slipping away in the dark, and the sirens are loud. I'll be checking soon. Oh, and all of your friends say I'm guilty as hell, and it's harder than July. And every tear I cry, if we die, then nothing's sacred, baby Jane. The color of such pretty eyes, I'll betrayed with a killing scheme of pain. Oh, Jane, a precious gem that I've deceived can't be saved. If when I call your name, you answer me, Jane.
Okay, so what can we take from this? Now, I'm going to factor in a lot of other elements as well, not just what we talked about in the video, but let's start with that. Did you hear any unstable notes? Notes that are outside of the scale, notes that sound a little bit wrong, a little bit unfriendly even. Now, in this song, there weren't too many, right? This was, I'll tell you about the reasons for that in a minute. But maybe you could hear in the pre-chorus it went da 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 da. Those are those unstable notes I was talking about before, right? To resolve from from the unstable note into the stable note, and that that's what makes music more sentimental, if you like. Now, the reason why there weren't more of these kind of unstable notes, these sentimental notes, was because the lyrics are already quite sentimental, right? They are quite soppy, to put a different kind of spin on it, right? And also the voice of the singer is already super emotional, right? So if we'd made the melody even more romantic and soppy and sentimental, then that would have been over the top. So with a combination we had, because the singer, my co-writer and I wrote this with the artist, with the singer, so we couldn't just get a session singer in and maybe somebody with a more neutral voice. So here we got somebody with a very emotional voice. And so you got to tailor the song towards the brief, if you like, what you've been given. And so here we decided not to make the melodies too emotional. Having said that, they are quite up and down, right? And with hindsight, I think I would have made some of the sections a little bit straighter, a bit more flat-lined, so that when the melodic section, when the rangy sections came in, they would have stood out more, right? But then, no song you ever write is perfect, and the same as no mix you ever do is perfect, and you will always find things later on that you wish you'd done differently, right? So I suppose it's a good lesson here. Now, I can't go back to that session, can't go back to that song, can't even go back to that era, right? Because music has moved on a little bit from that. But it's always, so some things are good. For example, in this song, the chorus, when it came in on the title, Jade, it was like one note, right? Whereas before it was more up and down. So that was probably the highlight in terms of writing for this song. And so that was done well. Other things maybe not so well. But like I said, every song has a lesson for us. And I hope, talking about stable, unstable, you heard that. I'm just going to play it again, maybe from a little bit further into the song.
Yeah. No, I never meant to take a shot at your heart, but I misfire. And your life is
more or less stable.
And the sirens are loud.
This just repeats, and now the unstable notes come up.
Friends say I'm guilty as hell and it's harder than July. And every tear I cry, if we die.
Did you hear that? Ah, like that. Right, and the chords were quite mysterious as well. So this all built up a lot of tension, which now releases into the chorus. Have a listen. Can you hear that? The chords become cleaner. Also the melody goes up. Da, 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 da. Right, so you get that tension and release, which is so important in songwriting. So stable and unstable, one aspect of it, very important aspect. There are others as well, which we'll be returning towards throughout these episodes on melody writing. But I want to get a little bit of everything into each episode, because it's almost impossible to isolate one single concept, because music, as you will have found out for yourselves, is quite complex. And it's a good idea to have a little preview of other things we may be covering later on. Right, next song. Let's see. Okay, so this is even more traditional R&B, and let's have a listen to that. It's called So Many Nights. Here it comes.
Was strong, I thought that life was gonna be alright, but I'm not made of stone, and losing you was a foolish thing to do. Now I'm lying awake, ache all
Okay, so I hope you could hear those juicy, unstable notes at the beginning of the chorus. Right? So many nights. Right? That's what gives that chorus a more emotional quality. Right? Because this is a very pleading kind of song. It's about missing somebody terribly. Right? And so I decided this is my song for a change. I didn't co-write this with anybody. I decided to just to lay it on thick in the chorus, and you could also hear that in the verses, although it also went a little bit up and down. The melody was a lot lower, and it was more matter of fact, more bluesy. Da, 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 like this, right? Not much was happening. So blues scale, pentatonic scale. For those of you who maybe play the guitar, this is all meat and drink to you. But then in the chorus, da 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 da. That's still largely pentatonic, but it's got those juicy, unstable notes. Da 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 da. Right. So it's got that emotional quality, which I think works very well with the lyric. And here the singer has got a little bit more of a grittier tone, a little bit of a harder edge to his voice. I think overall this works really well, even if I say so myself, because I really did write this song by myself and play all the instruments and all of that. So this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm trying to dissuade you from, but I haven't done it a lot, to be honest, because I enjoy it much more working with artists or with other writers. Right, what else have we got? Right, so this is a song I wrote in the US. For those of you watching in the US, it's called She Picked Me.
She was just my type, sexy lip thing with a beautiful vibe. All the fellas gathered round, shooting that game, but she turned them all down. And then her eyes met mine. Man, was I surprised, cause out of everyone else, I was a lucky guy. She picked me, she didn't really look at me. Please don't tell me that it's just a dream. Must be something in the way I walk. Somebody tell me how to do the smooth talk. Normally I'm just shy, but I guess it's time to change my style. I'm not afraid I'm gonna let that go. Time to let my feelings show. She picked me, yeah. Whoa.
All right, so here the contrast between verse and chorus was quite pronounced, because it was a lot more. It wasn't a complete speech-like melody, but this was written with a crew. That's what it was called back then, of rappers, and so the verse melodies are a lot more flatlined, right? Not super emotional. I wanted to play you this because this is a more of a light-hearted song, right? About this guy who never gets the girl, but on this particular day he does, and he can't believe it, right? So not as emotional as the others. There's Love Song about this wonderful woman called Jade, and then the second song was about missing somebody and counting the number of nights and so forth. And here it's more light-hearted, and the melody reflects that, right? It's always a good idea to put everything into a cohesive whole, and that's what I think we were 5 or 6 writers on this we achieved with this particular song, right? In terms of stable and unstable notes, da 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 da, right? This was the unstable note that made the chorus melody more interesting. If it had been da 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 da, so this would have resolved that unstable note straight away, right? So I'm singing it to you again how it was. Da 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 da, that's the unstable note. It leaves the listener hanging and wanting to resolve that tension. Now I'm going to resolve it. Da 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 da, like that. So it goes back to the root note, back to where we would expect it. And a lot of the time in melody writing, that's not what you want to do. Right? You want to surprise the listener. And one of the best ways to surprise the listener is by choosing lots of unstable notes, not too many, because then your music is going to sound like it's out of key, right? It's like you don't know what you're doing. But it's a good idea not to resolve every unstable note, right? Not to. It's a little bit like, say you're having, I'm not saying an argument with somebody, but say a forceful conversation, right? Maybe you disagree on somebody, and how boring would it be if we agreed with that other person after about 10 seconds, say, oh yeah, you're right. Right? I don't want to say you're right, darling, but you know what I mean, right? So that's the easy way out. But in melody writing, that's definitely not what we want to do, right? We want to be a bit bolder, a bit more adventurous, and leave those stable notes, unstable notes in there, so that that tension is being held for longer. And then when it resolves, right? So when you've had this forceful conversation with somebody, and then you make friends after that, then that feels a lot sweeter, doesn't it? And that's what this whole thing, that's why I played you the video. When we can play around with that at will, we have a lot more of a command of that melody writing language, if you like, and we can be a lot more deliberate about how we place our notes and how that goes together with the lyrics and the production, the sound of the voice, and all the other things, the image of the artist, all those other things that have to work together and that make this beautiful game of writing and production so frustratingly complicated, but also so magnificently rewarding at the same time. So let's play another song. Let's see what we've got here. All right, so I'm going to play a song from the 90s, and this is full of unstable notes. I think that's probably when I discovered unstable notes for the first time. I was also listening to Björk a lot at the time, and she is the queen of unstable notes. She really puts it out there. She doesn't care. And of course, together with the vocal delivery that she has, it gives her music that unhinged, totally free feel, which is so refreshing to hear. So this song isn't by Björk. This is a song I believe I wrote by myself again, and it's chock full of unstable notes. Hopefully you can recognize and appreciate that. Let's give it a spin. All right, so I hope you could hear that there were so many unstable, romantic, emotional notes. I should also say that when we talked about romantic and emotional notes, there are also stable notes that can be more sentimental and emotional, right? And that's mainly the major third, or also when we're in a minor key, in the minor third as well, right? So it doesn't always have to be unstable to be emotional. It's just the unstable notes are more surprising. So if we're in this kind of, give me an hour of sleep, right? This is like a weird, I don't even know what interval it is, but it's just the chords are quite weird as well. So if you put that together, you get something that was a little bit modeled around Bjork, like I said, but it has a unique quality to it. And that's what I wanted to achieve at the time. When that song was written, I was actually signed as an artist with a singer you can hear. And so we had more or less total freedom to do whatever we wanted. This wasn't written for a major international artist to cover. So it's a different type of songwriting when you write as an artist or with an artist, and if you're writing just for the general pool of songs in there for, say, the X Factor winner or people like that. And so yes, I had a lot more freedom with this song, and I think it shows in the instrumentation and the sparseness of the beat, and the sounds, the gamelan type of bell sounds, and also the way the chords and the melodies work together. Right, so we can probably play one more song for today, and I think by then you will have grasped the concept of stable and unstable, emotional and more matter of fact. This last song was very emotional all the way through. So let's see whether I can find something. All right, let's listen to this one here. This is a more recent song called Paper Sword, and let's give it a spin.
4 a.m. the clock keeps ticking, not even a call. Suddenly it dawns on me, it's just like a year ago. Every time I'm turning around to get a little sleep, I hear her voice. No, never saw it coming, 'cause I believed your promises. I want revenge, wanna taste its sweetness. You think you're such a man? Oh, just wait until you're in my honey trap. I'm gonna hurt you back slowly, so I can enjoy it more. I wanna hear your voice begging, begging for me to stop. I'm gonna cut so deep, then twist the knife. If I only could, but I'm not as brave as that. And the only thing I'll do is draw a paper sword. It's a crying shame, and I just feel so powerless.
Okay, so I hope you could hear the huge amount of contrast between verse and chorus here. So the verse was very flatline, da 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 da, right? Very matter of fact. Because with this song we wanted to keep a lot in reserve for the chorus, and again, da 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 da, that's unstable into stable, right? That gives us that perfect tension and resolution. And yes, so that's what I would encourage you to pursue in your own melody writing, is to first of all create massive amounts of contrast, and also explore those stable and unstable notes. And maybe go back, you can rewatch this video of course on this channel. If you go back to the video where I demonstrated how all these different notes hang together, the sequence they form, 1, 8, 5, 3, 6, 4, 2 and 7, getting ever more unstable, and play around with it on the piano or singing or on the guitar or whatever you use, your machine or whatever you have. And it's I think it's a good idea to have a little bit more knowledge about how music is put together, how it all works. And even if you've had lots of musical training before, just to be aware of that stable, unstable balancing act that we all have to perform, I think will definitely enhance your melody writing skills. And as always, if you want to find out more, then you can see it's all there written on the screen. You can always drop me an email, or you can leave a comment on the video, and I can talk you through your options of how you can study with me. Or of course there are lots of other courses as well at the Garnish School which are more production based. And of course these days, as modern writers and producers, we have to know everything, right? That's the beauty, and it's also the major challenge for us, that we have to have so many skills. I would say that songwriting is the most important skill, because it's probably the most difficult part of the game, and it's the hardest to learn. And that's why I put so much time into putting this songwriting course together, because a lot of this stuff does not exist, right? It's just you won't find it anywhere else. So I hope that was useful. Whether you continue studying with me or watching these episodes or not, you should be able to take something away into your very next writing session. And until the next episode, I shall wish you a lovely Sunday and have a great music making week.